Hi, Myquillyn. Welcome.
Hey, Allie. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. So you are one of our authors for our October book month, and your book, Cozy Minimalist Home, is your second book, right?
It is. Yeah, my first book was called The Nesting Place. It was all about embracing imperfection. And so this one is more like hands-on, how to approach decorating in your home like a cozy minimalist.
Yeah, I love it. So one of the main reasons that I wanted to have you here is because, we do something pretty similar. What I do is I talk to moms about simplifying their space, and in doing that, you really simplify your life and you create an atmosphere that allows you to live and focus on what really matters and the people, and less about maintaining your stuff. And so when you kind of came across my desk, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I love that you really talk about this from a decorating perspective, because while I love to decorate, I actually studied interior design like you, and then ended up not. I just didn't like doing it for other people.
Yes, I get that.
Yeah, I love it. I just wanted it to be for me. I don't know how to describe and teach that. It's just not my gifting at all, but it is for sure yours. So I feel like everyone's going to be really excited about this episode, and you're kind of filling this little gap that I just don't know how to. I feel like I know how to do it, but I don't know how to show you how to do it. And you do that so well.
Well, thank you. That's what I didn't want to go in people's homes. I'm such an introvert. And so I did some design school, and then I was like, this is the pits. I don't want to have to go in people's houses and move their recliner. But there's something about the internet and encouraging women to do things themselves. I can do that. And it's been like 11 years now. I'm one of the grandmothers of the internet when it comes to that. It's been so fun. And people can actually change their homes, which really in turn helps us change the way we function and changes our lives in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So I just want to dive right into this book and what it's about, and just pick your brain a little bit. So you talk, basically the whole thing is cozy becomes clutter when there's no purpose behind it, and that we don't have to have like cozy and minimalism opposite ends of the spectrum, that they can actually live together, which I love. I actually have a really modern style. Like, I like clean lines. I like a lot of white. So I feel like I kind of fall a little bit stereotypical minimalist in some ways, but I never want my home to feel like you can't sit down and put your feet up on the coffee table. Like, I let my kids jump on the couches. I want my house to feel warm and welcoming. And you talk about that same thing so well, that you can have cozy and minimalism in the same space, and like you should really, because it serves such a purpose. So can you talk about how we can give cozy a purpose and what you mean by that?
Absolutely. I love that question. Cozy, really, the whole purpose is to be comfortable and to let our guard down when we come in people's homes. And I think for a long time, I thought that cozy was a style. So I thought, oh, I want my home to be cozy, so I need to get like more and more pillows from Target and more throws and more things on my coffee table. But that just is filling a house up. And so when you kind of flip it and think of the purpose of cozy is to serve the people, then you have a starting point and you also have a finishing point. And that's what I could never grasp in the early years of making home, was I never knew when it was finished. I just kept feeling like I needed to add more stuff. And so, but when I thought about cozy as that tool that I can use, same with minimalism, thinking of it as a tool. So instead of like two opposite extremes, they actually can be BFFs that are tools that we use in our home. So the cozy brings in that comfortable feeling, and the minimalism brings in that peaceful feeling. And I know all of us want both of those things in our home. It just made sense to me, and it kind of helped me find my way, because I really admire minimalism and minimalists. Like, I love that. But I also love beautiful things in my home and want it to feel warm and welcoming. And there are so many of us, like, that's really what everyone wants. No one wants a cluttered home when it comes down to it. We might not behave like that, but, on paper, we would say we don't want that. And the same with a super sparse, unwelcoming, cold home. Like, minimalists don't want that either. So we're all somewhere in the middle of that. Just depends on where we fall, and a lot of that has to do with our personal style. But a cozy minimalist at the heart, when it comes to home, she wants the most amount of style with the least amount of stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And your book is divided up really. I really feel like you kind of get to the point. It's not a difficult read. It's not super thick and loaded with stories. Like, you kind of really, in the beginning, you just kind of talk about how you got here and like your journey with this, and then you dive right into like practicalities, which I love. But in the beginning, you kind of talk about how you realized that you were more of a stuff manager instead of a home curator. And I love the way you phrase that. So can you talk about, like, kind of unpack that and what's the difference?
Yeah, it wasn't until I didn't realize I was a stuff manager at the time. It took us moving from a bigger house to a smaller house, which is a trigger for many of us. And I realized I had collected a lot of stuff. And, I think it started back when we had a younger family and we would move into a home and we needed a chair for a desk and a lamp to work next to. So we actually needed things for our home. And so I would go thrifting. I would find it at a great price and give myself a high five, like, look what I did. But I didn't have that feeling of enough. Like, I never knew when to call it. When I hit that line of, okay, I have enough lamps, I have enough chairs, I just knew, like, oh, if one looks great, I guess 10 more chairs would look 10 times as great. And I found them for a great deal for $7. So that got me in a little trouble. I didn't trust that if I was good enough at finding a deal in the first place, that I would be able to find it in the future. I had a lot of fear about, what if I need that later? What if I get rid of it now and I need it? And so I was holding on to things out of fear. And then when we moved, it was a huge burden. And I realized that I was spending a lot of time like moving stuff, organizing stuff, taking care of stuff, washing stuff, fussing about stuff, tripping over stuff. And I'm like, I am a freaking stuff manager. This is crazy town. This is not how I want to live my life. And so I felt like my stuff was in charge of me instead of me being the boss of my stuff, kind of like a museum curator, of really being intentional, which I know you appreciate, but what comes in and also what goes out. When it comes to design, I think something no one ever talks about is the fact that we always have to be on our toes editing. And, I think we all can agree, like in our life, we need that margin and white space. But we also need that on our walls and on our mantle and in our kitchen and in our bedroom. Like it goes and covers so many areas of our life. And I was ignoring that for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we get kind of caught up in like what everyone else is doing or like what typically is done. And I always use the example for my own story of the kitchen. Like, I don't like to cook. It's just not my favorite thing. But when I started to, it was like 6 or 7 years ago now, figure out like, oh, my life is ruled by the maintenance of my things. And I started to clear that. I stopped putting every single thing on the countertop. Like, only my coffee maker and my KitchenAid were there. And I put like the toaster oven and like the crock pot and things that I use, but not every second. Like, the coffee maker is always on. That needs to be on the countertop. But everything else could go underneath, and it cleared my counter space. Takes me an extra 2 seconds to pull the crock pot out to use it. But the ambiance, I guess, in my kitchen is so much lighter. I actually started to enjoy being in there. And like, I would make cooking like this ritual with like, I'd pour like a half a glass of wine and like put some worship music on and just like be in my kitchen. And I was enjoying that space instead of maintaining stuff, going into my cluttered kitchen and then doing my least favorite thing at the end of a long day. And it's so funny how just clearing, and I'll get into it in a second, how you talk about quieting that room lightened my load so much and actually made me enjoy something that I was dreading. Every day I cooked and I hated it. So, it sucked. It matters,
Yes, it's such a great example. And I think, again, like for the longest time, I was really attracted to like what you just said, but I assumed that meant like every space in my house needed to be cleared off. But what you said is the perfect example. Like, if we can give ourselves the gift of maybe one cleared off space per room and not worry about the rest, like that's such a nice baby step. You kind of become addicted to it because it's so nice to come home. And it's not that your kitchen island is never like, it doesn't mean that 24 hours a day it's empty. What it means is it's empty and ready for you to mess it up and use it and have life there. And that's the beauty of having a few designated empty spaces or surfaces in your home, is so that you can use them to the fullest and live in your house and not have to move 7 decorative things off just so that you can get to a space, which was the story of my life for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think that's going to be the quotable that we use for this episode because it's so obvious, but it's a light bulb moment for so many of us because that's just how you do things. Everything needs to look, especially in like the Instagram sphere, everything's got to look perfect, and there's 3 little things set by the sink just perfectly, and that's not practical. Like I always see people's homes like that and think like, is that always there? Because that sucks. Like it's in your way. You can't even wash your hands without moving a little bird out of the way.
That's so true.
So can you, I mean, you kind of did a little bit, but if there's anything left there, I really want everyone to leave this episode feeling equipped and like, okay, I've got it, and they can like go and take action. So can you explain a little more the feeling of having, how you talk about like just enough in your house? What does that look like?
Ooh, that is really good. Well, first of all, I think sometimes we can think like, oh, well, this is just for people that are super visual, or this is just for people that are designery or were born with that gene. And that's so untrue. I think most of us can attest to that. And there's even a study that shows that when women walk into their own cluttered home, their cortisol levels rise, which is so unhealthy for us. And I do not need a person in a lab coat to tell me that. Like I have experienced that in and of myself. So just knowing that helps me to realize that I need to be able to draw the line. So where is that going to be? And I think the grace in the cozy minimalist message and in the minimalist movement is that your line might be in a different place than mine. And that is okay. Like that's what I love about, all of those, graceful is the best word to say, because what you need in your life right now is different than what I need. If you have babies, or I have 3 boys that are 21, 18, and 17. And so for me, in my family room, we have tennis shoes, backpacks, and phone chargers. And I'm okay with that. So when it comes to thinking about enough, like if you think about furnishing a guest room, so in my olden days, I would say, oh, I get to furnish a guest room. I'm going to find every pillow that will work with my style that I can afford that I run into today. And that would have been my cutoff, like whatever I can find that I can afford. But now as a cozy minimalist who wants the most amount of style with the least amount of stuff, I will say, what can I get the biggest impact from that will serve the person who needs to stay in the room? So if I'm a person in the room and I get up in the morning, like I want to put my feet down on a cozy rug. I need to have privacy, so there needs to be something on the windows. I need a light to read by. I want them to have super cozy, like the comfiest sheets in the world. And so the things that help the people, that is my line for coziness. So I can't go too over to the minimalism and have 0 sheets on the bed. That is crazy. Right. But also I don't need 24 pillows on the bed. And so we get to decide that line based on how people are going to use it and how the stuff serves the people.
Yeah, I love that. And so kind of on that same note, like you're perfectly leading into my next question.
You're welcome.
I hate when I'm going to do a podcast and they send me the questions beforehand, because I'm like, no, it's going to feel forced. And I feel like people are going to think that I did that because you're just like literally the next question. But I was going to ask you if you could talk about that shift between trying to make your home look better and making your home serve better, because as somebody who appreciates like a beautiful aesthetic, and I really love design and style, and I am with you, where I tend to naturally kind of like, well, these throw pillows are all beautiful and on sale, and they go perfectly in this room. It would just look so great, but then it sucks to throw 58 throw pillows off bed before I climb in. How do you kind of make that shift and maybe find the balance between those two things?
Well, the first thing, I think a lot of us think like, okay, I want to approach my room. It needs a change. It needs to be freshened up. So I guess I need to go to the furniture store. False. Stop. Like we never start in the furniture store. One of the ways you always start is you think about how you need to use that room in the next year or two. So not how you used it in the past, not how you're going to need to use it when your parents move in 10 years, but what season of life you're in right now and how you need that room to serve you. And again, like even if the builder said, well, that's a dining room, it doesn't matter. Like you get to decide and be the boss of your room, how it's going to serve you. And when you start with that mindset, then then you are able to step into that and allow your rooms to work for you. So then you'll say, oh, well, we're going to have family game nights. So we need a surface big enough to play the games that we like to do together. If you're going to eat pizza in your room, nothing wrong with that, but you probably don't want to get a silk sofa. So you get to think about how you're going to use the room. And what that does is it helps with decision fatigue, because isn't that the scary part? It's making those decisions. And so that's all design is making smart decisions about your home based on what you like and how you're going to use it. So as you think about how you're going to use it, that really limits your decisions, which in this kind of world is actually a really good thing. So I think it's so helpful to know, like, this is exactly how we're going to use our room. It doesn't matter what my mother-in-law says or how the people who lived here before. This is how we need to use it now. And that's how you move forward in that.
Yeah, that's very, very simplified. And that's where everyone gets held up. One time I did like a Q&A trying to serve my audience outside of where like my zone is, just of like, what's troubling you with decorating? And I just, you know how you can do like the questions on Instagram and it kind of in a different place. And everybody's was this. And I didn't know how to describe, like, well, just do it. I just started.
Right.
What do you need in the room? Like, just do it, because it just comes naturally to me. But that's it. Like, that is the answer to it. Like, what are you using it for right now? Don't get overloaded with what it was supposed to be. And our dining room is our homeschool area, because that's what we
love
need.
That.
Yes. And you can make it beautiful. You will see it right when you walk in. So you can make it cute and stuff, but it's got to be functional above all. And I think you just hit it on the head. Like, that's what's holding everybody back, is that feeling of decision fatigue. And like, well, is this what you're supposed to do? And it doesn't matter. What do you need? So I love that.
Right. Yeah.
So you talk a little bit in the book about giving your eyes a Sabbath from your home. Can you elaborate on that? And like, what did you mean by that?
Well, what I meant by that is kind of what we touched on in the beginning, is about having margin and a period of rest in our life, which we're kind of, some of us do that on Sunday, or we kind of set up our life to have that rhythm and routine of like a built-in rest. But for me, when it came to my walls, I would like put something on my wall and be like, well, that's too small, so let me add 20 other things. I felt like any empty space in my home was a problem that needed to be solved by filling it. And I didn't realize the gift of having some white space on my walls. And, a practical step to learn to appreciate that is just I call it quieting the house. And you can do that, like, I do it one room at a time, even though I say house. But sometimes I'll do like a major quiet if I'm going to attack the whole room, and I'll take everything out except like the big furniture. I'll take the artwork off the walls, the lamps out. It helps you to see your room with fresh eyes again. But if you just need a little reset, and if your room feels a little off, sometimes the simplest thing to do is just to take everything off the walls and tell yourself, I'll put it back on, by 5 o'clock tonight. Or maybe you give yourself permission to live with it empty for 24 or 48 hours. And something kind of magical happens when you do that. And every time, without question, I realize that I have too much stuff out. And a lot of us, I think over time, we add to our home. We bring home a little trinket from Target or Home Goods or whatever, and we are constantly adding. But unless we take the time to intentionally subtract, and I like to subtract kind of like all in one, and then I'll bring stuff back, but to allow yourself to like, okay, I'm going to take out all the tchotchkes, or I'm going to take out all the artwork, or I'm going to clear off every surface and let it breathe for a night. And we're going to use this room tonight as a family without stuff on every surface. Just wait and see how your family reacts. Like, even the dog notices. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's so funny. I love that. So would you say that that's maybe like a good place to start, or is there like another way you would have people kind of start implementing this whole idea?
Well, I have like a whole step to kind of, especially if you've never really attacked a room and focused on that one room and kind of got it looking the way you've always hoped, so that you can use it the way you've always dreamed, not so that you can show off or have it in a magazine, but so that you're comfortable using it. So I have like a whole step process that I go through in the book, but it's not anything like mind-boggling. I mean, it's really like, just talk to your family and tell them, like, I'm going to work on this living room for a while, so it might look different. So just be prepared. Like, it'll be okay. Or like, if it's the room you usually watch TV in, maybe set up another space. And then also creating a pin board. with that room in mind, you just pin with passion anything that just, for whatever reason, you like. You don't have to explain it. So there's some back steps like that that are so simple, and they're not intimidating. You're not going to a furniture store and dropping money on a new sofa, nothing like that. So those simple ways to start, what they do is they give us some little wins, and they make us excited about our home. And then we start thinking about how we're going to use it and what we need to set it up for. Like, maybe your kids are going to do homework in there. So then and only then do you start like touching things in your room and quieting the room, taking things out. And then maybe a few days later, you start moving your furniture around to make sure it's in the right place for your next season of life. So you start with what you have. You shop your house. You may look around in other rooms. Like if you do need that homework table, maybe you have a table in the garage or at your mom's. So there's like just really simple steps like that you've done before. You're looking for things that you like, that you can use. It's all fun and happy. I mean, decorating is fun, but it's not always easy if you don't know where to start. And so we really walk through an order of things so that you're not like painting our walls green and then realize that the rug that you love isn't going to go with that. And so that takes a lot of the fear out of it, is just knowing like what the next simple step is. We don't have a huge deadline. You can do this over time as you're working, as you're making dinner, whatever it is. But it feels so good to have a room that you're proud of, because I know when I hate my room, I'm a lot less likely to volunteer to host the baby shower or the community group or whatever it is. And then when I do host it, like I'm distracted by how it looks. And so if I can just do a few simple things to get my house in a place where I'm not embarrassed of it or I love it even, how about that? Then I am ready to use it the way I've felt called to use it all my life. And that's what I really want for women.
Yeah, I was just going to say before you started saying that, I love that. It's when you feel more confident. It's kind of like when you feel more confident about yourself. Maybe you got healthier, you got like a new outfit, and you just feel amazing. The first thing you want to do is go out on date night with your husband or go out with your friends. Like, get out. And the thing with your home is when you feel confident about it and you love even just one main room. We move a lot. We have moved a lot. And the first thing I always did was the main living room so that I could have people over. When you feel good about that, you immediately start serving people and loving people better with your home, which I think is such the point of what we're here to do. And so it seems, I feel like a lot of people think that this kind of stuff is surface or extra, or just, oh, not right now. But if you would just decorate your house better by subtracting from it and start to feel better and cozier and more confident about your space, it affects your life. It affects how you feel about your family. And I know what study you're talking about, the one that UCLA did where they did the saliva swabs and on the web. And literally there's the more clutter, the more cortisol, like the higher the cortisol levels and the less. And it's like a screaming fact. Like, this matters. It's not surface. It's not about having a perfectly clean house and taking that amazing Instagram snap. It's about having a space that you walk into and you feel like you can take a deep breath and invite your neighbor over who's having a bad day without feeling embarrassed. It's affecting like the way we live our lives well. And it's so important. I love what you do. Okay. So what would you say? I feel like a lot of what I hear and like what I do with these women is that they're afraid to declutter. Like, it feels so final and abrupt, I think, to make a decision that like officially I'm letting go of this, whatever it is, even though they're pretty sure it's not serving them and they can live a full life without it. I think they're like attaching themselves to their things, and that it's super common. I used to struggle with the same thing. But in some circumstances, I feel like it's beneficial to maybe temporarily remove something instead of forcing yourself to make that final cut. And you talk about that that's what the whole quieting your space thing is, just kind of temporarily removing something and seeing how you feel. So have you done that with anything kind of big where it was like, okay, I'm going to make this I'm going to temporarily remove this big thing that everyone else needs, and then you saw that it was better without it, you kept it, or anything that you can think of that was kind of like, wow, I can't believe I actually made this shift, or somebody that you helped maybe?
Ooh, that's such a great question. Let me dwell on that as I respond in other ways of just
Sure.
because I think we say, because listen, I love pretty things and you love pretty things too. I know it. Like I love beautiful things. I love having beautiful things in my house, but I don't love them more than having a home that works for me. And so to always have that in my head helps me be able to part with things. And the beauty of working through our house one room at a time and then kind of being done, like the goal is to kind of forget about your house so that you can just invite people over, not have to think about the state of your house. Wouldn't that be ideal? Like that's the number one thing. But once we work through our home and you feel confident about every room, you don't want to junk it up. You kind of want to get rid of it. And so it kind of automatically happens where you're like, well, I'm not going to mess with that. Like I just spent a lot of time making sure that room works for our family. So I'm not going to keep extra stuff. So I'm trying to think if there was something, my family has never guilted us about if they've given us something and we've gotten rid of it. I think that comes up a lot. And, I think part of that is just being an adult and saying we don't need it. And if you love it so much, you are welcome to have it back or sell it. Like I hear that so much and it makes me sad. Like, first of all, this is just like, it's just an old sofa. Like let them have it back if it's such a big deal. So many of us are living with things we hate because someone was kind to us, but we are afraid to hurt their feelings, thinking they're going to be mad because we want the home that they decided they want. They didn't want that thing in their house anymore, but now you have to keep it. Like it's crazy. So I've never really, I don't know. I'm just really happy to get rid of, I think bigger stuff is easier for me than the small things. For some reason, I don't know why. Like I'll keep like a little trinket for way too long, but something big, I guess, because it does take up so much visual room. I'm like, I'll find that later. So we've been through like a couple of pianos because we used one for a while and then we didn't need it, and no one guilt tripped us, and I'm so grateful for that. And I want to keep that in mind with my own boys as they get older. Like I never want to guilt them with furniture gifts with expectations that are tied to that.
Like what's sentimental to me has to be sentimental to you. It's that whole thing. I see people do that a lot with their kids' toys, which is so funny because this is a place where that's where I started. I don't know if you know my story at all, but I had this terrible life where I was burdened and overwhelmed. And my day when I started to like just purge it all out of my house, I started with the toys, and it's so easy for me. Like, well, this isn't my stuff. Like, this is all pointless, loud. They don't even play with it. But I see people doing this. Like, well, I had this when I was a kid. Well, do they play with it? No. Okay. Like, you're kind of like wishing that your kids would have the value that you have. And yeah, I think people are afraid to hurt people's feelings, and it's really, it kind of comes down to a boundary issue a lot of the time. We had my great grandparents passed away, and their home was beautiful, like 70s legit furniture. And my mom and my aunt brought everything down from the Midwest out to California and gave me everything. And it was like, well, I'm so glad, and I'll keep this lamp, but I don't really want this. And they were so offended, but they didn't want it. And so I think letting go of like, well, I'm not obligated here. And it's just a boundary issue. And I think that what you just said about that sets people free so much. You're not obligated. There's no secret contract that you've got to hold on to this and value it for at least 10 years,
Yep. Preach.
Okay. So Cozy Minimalist Home is out this month. And you can get it anywhere, right? Amazon, Barnes & Noble?
Anywhere. You sure can.
Awesome. I'm so excited for you. I have your first book, and I have this one too, obviously. And it's such an easy read, both books. Very like load lightning, very simple. Doesn't like run on unnecessarily. You make your point, you kind of back it up with some examples, and then that's it. And you show us how to do it. And I love that for moms, especially. Like that's the kind of writing we need. Just what can I do though? Like help.
Right. Yes. I hope it's super applicable. That's my goal. And thank you for those words. It's super encouraging.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for being here with us. I'm so excited that you were here and that you're sharing this with these women. I think it's going to be just really practical and really helpful. And we all need some more of that.
I hope so. Thanks, Allie.
Thanks.